Okay, welcome to video 2 of my blue and yellow-blue minstrel guide. What I'm going to be dealing with obviously now is legendary items. Obviously this is the make or break of a good mini. It still doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a great mini, but I think at the moment, more so than gear, because of the lack of set bonus, unless you finish the Mordrith raid, which I highly doubt you have. Obviously the major bonuses you're going to be getting to your healing are going to come mostly through your healing items, especially with the important hotfixes like relics and such. Your legendary items really need the TLC. Remember, as I said before, probably not going to affect this section. I am untraded, so let's have a look. There's a few that I would change in my allies, and I'll point them out. And then there's some things that you can't do without. First things first, you definitely can't make a healing DPS legendary items and heal T2C content with it. It's just not going to happen. You can maybe have that for the Moors, like a half healing, half DPS set if you wanted to. I would still probably not even recommend that because you can swap legendary items in the middle of a fight. Obviously, you can switch between your blue and red. It's the only thing you can switch is your, well, I'm not sure about other classes, but I know for most of them you can switch your sword, your legendary item, your shields and such in mid-combat. Obviously you can use that for swappers. And a few things I will point out that actually could be kept on a swapper weapon. My legendary items obviously set up for blue and yellow, blue healing. So there's a few things that are dead legacies, but we'll point that out. Okay, let's start off with the sword. Healing, inductions, and critical rating, that is the necessity, is the most important thing you can get on the sword, pretty much. Like I said before, minstrels get that extra 5k crit, there it is hidden, but it's only 2 healing skills. That pushes me up onto pretty much the 71 mark, and obviously the inductions, the more quicker you're healing, and then you get your crits, and then it speeds up and you just keep on going faster and faster with your heals. That's pretty much the idea behind that legacy. And very, very important, like should be number 1 on your ally list. I'd say next important is your Triumphant Spirit cooldown and your Triumphant Spirit critical. That's pretty much, if you trade it correctly, it's a 45-second cooldown heal, which is huge. The largest one I hit before they brought out the new gear was 280k on a captain who was shanking a COS round. It wasn't by any crazy means of stacking buffs. That was just in a normal fight, just, you know, healing, and got out something nice and decent out of that. So it is a nice sizable heal, and it's probably the second most important legacy. Third, I would say, is probably your anthem duration. I'll explain that in the sense of, I mean, we're going to look at trait trees in a sec, but I mean, basically, minstrels should be maintaining at least the 3rd age anthem, if possible, Anthem of War and the 3rd age anthem at all times to pretty much boost DPS, cut their inductions, and give up bigger heals. And obviously, the longer that anthem lasts, the less time you're wasting refreshing those anthems, which means more time healing. If you do not obviously have this, you're going to be spending a lot more time refreshing anthems, which is heals lost, and that pretty much means raids wiped. So very important. Obviously, you don't have to take it up all the way, because the sub skill that actually scales after, I think it's 39, is pretty much just melee critical skills magnitude. And obviously, the only heal you're going to get from that is Healer Strike, which pretty much no one uses unless you're removing corruptions, which actually isn't the worst thing for boss 2, but anyway, I'm not going to get too much into that. Obviously, after that, rallying cooldown, that is very important in the sense of, with a blue minstrel, your res pretty much goes to I think a minute and a half. And obviously that cooldown works in yellow as well, which takes it down to 7.5 minutes, which is still bloody long, but you know, to kind of have that cooldown it's very needed. You know, it's it gets ridiculous, and obviously blue minstrels then can raise several times in a fight, single targets, and it's a very good. Although I have to admit, a lot of minstrels actually keep that on a swapper weapon. So obviously if they need to res, they'll quickly swap a weapon, res, and then switch back to the healing weapon, which isn't actually the worst idea in the world, and you can slot something more important in there at the moment, although I don't really like to switch too much between allies on my minstrel. With my captain or warden or whatever, it's fine, but with my minstrel I kind of like to just keep it all in one set because of the speed I like to operate at. SOS, I'm not kind of going now in order, I'm just going to kind of go through them. SOS is obviously a blue skill only, so it's a little bit of a dead legacy when you go into yellow. At the moment, it's not the worst thing in the world for the extra mitigations and stuff. It's not my favorite skill. I think at the 105 cap I barely used it, although it is nice to use to cut inductions. I'll explain that when I get to skills and rotations and such, and kind of the idea of healing. But yes, I mean, you could probably put something else in there if you wanted to, although you'll pretty much see that we run out of things to trait. Wool, terrible. It was good at the 105 cap because that's like explained in the stats area where outgoing healing got capped before tactical mastery. So obviously wool wasn't bad then, and obviously all the other bonuses and mitigations and stuff that came through it were pretty decent at the time. Obviously now I should probably go vitality in there, but it's a bit late now. Call to eye with obviously a blue skill again. It's a nice skill. I was trying to explain to people the other day that if I ever used call to eye with in blue, I'm not hitting triumphant spirit afterwards, because that already is such a massive skill. It doesn't need to be over critted. Like I said before, I mean 208k heal, I mean it's so much over healing done. So what I like to do is I use this skill when I'm on the move, and then I usually combo it with Inspire Fellows, which is a raid wide heal. I mean not raid wide, fellowship wide heal, but it's an instant fellowship wide heal, so that pretty much means that it's going to crit onto them and give it pretty much a nice decent fellowship heal. And then on top of that, if I see they still need healing, then I can always go for Triumphant Spirits afterwards. But I'll explain that more in terms of healing and rotations and what every spell's doing. Let's have a look at what we could have gone for. Obviously DPS all the way through, that's pretty much all DPS, it's nothing interesting. Still as Death and Song of Distraction, I like that, although in the new raids and stuff they've pretty much made it that you can never flop. And Song of Distraction, 90% of the mobs I've seen auto pull pretty much everything as soon as you engage combat, so it's kind of become less favorable. Back in the days of like Spoirank and Question around Mordor, I was actually using this quite a lot because I was solo leveling, and as you remember, the landscape was fairly challenging. It's not a bad thing to have for a healer, but I wouldn't really put it in with the new content. Other than that, there's nothing. It's pretty much the rest of it was all DPS and vitality here, and that's pretty much what I would have swapped my will out for if I had the motivation to, but I'm kind of waiting to see if maybe they bring out new stats legacies, because obviously they don't scale as well, and obviously vitality in essence you get in 600 and something, where will you get in like 200 and something or 300 and something, so it's almost like it's half the value if you want to see it that way, and that's why I haven't really been too convinced yet to swap it out. So I'll wait rather and see what happens. So as you can see, there's not really any other legacies that I would take on my sword, and that's pretty much why my sword looks the way it does. Let's quickly have a look at the sword like this. I'm not sure if this is the way I actually wanted to do it. Let's maybe whip out the book and the sword before I go through the book legacies. We can explain that in a second. I want to kind of go through tactical healing rating. So fully capped tactical healing song book will give you 149 tactical healing rating. There was a massive cry out because I think at the 105 cap when you ended you had about 143 after all your crystals. And I think you went up a total of 6 after like 5 crystals or something silly. And pretty much what they did is they broke the scaling of healing. And obviously with outgoing healing, not scaling as well to tactical mastery, as soon as Mordor launched, there was a massive nerf on healing. People that were hitting like 60, 70k bolsters could only hit like 50, 20ks. And so obviously that stuffed it up. And that's why I haven't made a healing video up until now pretty much, because it was pretty much no no need for it. So obviously what they did to fix it when they released Courts of Saragosse is they brought out the rare and incomparable Vanguard rune of binding. And pretty much what that's done is added an extra 96 and 74, I think the rare was, tactical healing rating, which is the same as that obviously. And there was a massive confusion at 105 cap whether tactical damage rating actually affected your heals, and a lot of people were convinced it did, and they ran the Pelennor gear, and obviously now we realize it doesn't. And I was one of the people that thought it didn't, so I'm pretty happy with myself at the moment. The difference between tactical healing rating and, say, the incomparable rune of striking, which is your pure DPS, is the striking will affect the base stats on the weapon which it's traded. So if it's an offhand weapon like, say, a hunter, and you've actually got it on your sword, it doesn't actually increase the damage on your bow. Obviously, because it's going to increase the damage rating on your sword. Same with the warden. If you have it on your sword and you go and slot one on your spear, it's not going to affect any of the damage on your sword. And that's why usually if you're going to use your sword, you would slap maybe the increased physical in your spear to help you boost the damage from your sword, because that number does carry across. I hope this isn't too complicated, but this is the best way I found to explain it. The way I found to explain it is that this tactical healing rating gets added to whatever rune of tactical healing rating. The same works for tactical damage rating. These two basically go into a holding pool, so those two 96s get added and you go up to, what's that, 192. Then that 192 gets added to whatever's on your book, which is the 149. And then that gets multiplied by your outgoing healing percentage, and then gets multiplied through whatever spell you're going to cast. And that pretty much gives you the size of the heal. So you can slot the tactical healing rating in both book and sword. It definitely works. That's why I wanted to pull these up, to just show you that I have them in both weapons. Obviously you could go for whatever you want here. You could go for the mitigations if you wanted to. It's not the worst. I mean, to be honest, the numbers are so small, it's going to be very insignificant. But if you're one of those people that likes to be minted, go for whatever you want there. If you haven't got gilded, crafted, or completely gilded with your crafting kin or whatever you call it, just go for morale or whatever you want. Like I said before in the stats, if you didn't have tac mids capped, I would go for them in either one or two of these relic slots, as brutality is kind of a half measure. The reason I'm going for it is for the crit. The parry and evade, I just kind of in the back of my mind think, okay, great, more survivability, but to be honest, it's not going to be the end all be all. I'd rather have tac mids there and slot something more useful like vitality or pure crit in my armor, although I have to admit the crit rating there is pretty decent. It's better obviously than the old ones. And then Abysmal Gem, obviously vitality is the only way to go. If you went war here or anything else, that's incredibly silly. And another word on tactical healing rating is it is much more worth it than going for outgoing healing there. I would explain that, but like I said to you before, this base number here is what your outgoing healing is going to be multiplied through. So if you can pump this base number up, and there obviously are better relics when you complete the raid, but you need to be able to pump that number up to actually get out any decent sized heal. Great, on to the book. The book is obviously your more heal focused kind of ally compared to the sword, because obviously it's the book. So cap tactical healing rating, you don't have to cap the sword. I mean, you can leave it at whatever. I think I threw things in when I wasn't carrying, but obviously the book you have to cap. Healing motivation skills, just bigger heals. Pretty much I'm not going to go too much into that because big heals. Anthem of War, physical and tactical, that is very important for blue and for yellow. If you're running 3 or 6 bands, or you're running as the yellow mini, this pretty much is one of your best kind of advantages of being a minstrel is your Anthem of War buff. When you do Anthem stacking, when you do yellow minion, you're trying to maintain 3 of them, that increased mastery goes all the way up to just under 22k. Then plus the 5%, I'm talking about 3 Anthem stack. Now 5% on top of that extra 15% damage, that's a big help for any hunter or RK who wants to kind of finish off, cap their DPS. Yeah, it's a necessity. Raise the Spirit healing, I would call this more of a yellow heal, and I'll explain to it in healing cooldowns and rotation. In blue it's fairly useless because you're mostly going to be using bolster, and then speaking of that, there's bolster. In yellow, what I usually do is I use both of these skills quite frequently. I'll explain to you how, but in blue obviously Raise the Spirit is a dead legacy and bolster courage healing is your main one. Inspire Fellow is definitely my favorite heal. I really miss the old FI gear, and I was very excited to see the extra 5% or the minus 5% damage reduction from the set bonus gear, and that's obviously what I'm going for. Court of Salvation crit, really good. It scales well in blue, it's good in yellow. It's got a % heal bonus based on it, and obviously crit and heals are increasing your attack speed, and it's like a 10-second cooldown. So it's also really good heal. Let's have a look at under Raise the Spirit, which other legacies could be interesting. Anthem of Composure, I'm not really a fan of. Grab the Chorus cooldown. It's hard to say because I trade in such a way to get the resets in blue and in yellow, so I can instantly get this refreshed. If you were going for a yellow, red, blue build, and I will go over yellow, red, blue build in trait trees, this could actually be useful because it gives you a massive cooldown, which obviously means you can try and maintain the buffs as long as possible, the attack speed buffs, and I'll go more into that. I would trade this if I could. I just don't really see a place where I can fit it in my kind of. Unless I took away Court of Salvation crit rating, I mean that's probably the only place I could actually slot that in. Rest of it, DPS, healing power, never really had a problem. Light damage, DPS, target resists, DPS. So the only one in here that actually interests me is Cry of the Chorus. The rest of them are fairly useless. Perfect. So as I said before, that's pretty much what you want. Titles, crit, if you want to go for the legendary titles, as you can see through the 460, my weapon's got the same. Other than that, that's pretty much everything you need to know about legendary items. I mean, I've shown you pretty much what you need and what you could swap out from mine to kind of get what you want. But yeah, that's pretty much it. There's nothing else I would kind of go towards. Thanks.